Hello and welcome to a very impromptu transmission today, and I'm coming from my old set because I wasn't expecting this to come out at this time today, and also I haven't done a live chat for a very long time, so I thought it would be nice to hop on and talk to you all about this latest news that Prince Harry has lost his bid to pay for private security when in the UK. So without too much preamble, I will pretty much just get into it. As always, I am the consummate professional and I always keep an emergency tiara handy. I moved all of my other tiaras to the old house, but I always keep a spare just in case, and a jacket. So here we are, a little bit stripped back, but never mind. So I'm thinking that people will be dropping in as and when. But I am going to read from a breaking news article and we'll also stop and discuss it as we go. So the main news is, of course, that Prince Harry has lost his bid for to pay for private security when in the UK. Security has been a priority and an issue for Prince Harry ever since he decided to step back. I remember when he initially stepped back, when he released that impromptu statement that took the palace and the press quite by surprise. He thought in his own mind that just because he was born a prince and had led a very privileged life and upbringing, he thought that he deserved to have police protection when in the UK, wherever he was in the world, Canada, the USA, wherever. He expected the British taxpayer to stomp up for private security wherever he was in the world. Then, of course, he was told that no, that's not the way it's going to work. You can't just dictate what you want to happen. You can't just basically write a white paper and we will just go with it. These things haven't been discussed. Anyway, fast forward. I think it was 2019 when Prince Harry applied to see whether or not he could have police protection, whether in the UK or abroad, or even whether or not he could pay for it. I think it might have been 2020 where he offered to pay for it once it had been refused outright. And then, of course, he launched legal action, which has taken this long to come to any kind of fruition. So Harry asked for permission to bring a High Court challenge over a decision that he should not be allowed to pay privately for his protective security. At a hearing earlier this month, a judge was asked by Harry's legal team to allow the Duke to proceed with a claim over decisions taken by the Home Office and Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures, otherwise known as RAVEC, which falls under the remit of the department. In December 21 and February 22, the Home Office, opposing Harry's claim, said RAVEC considered it was not appropriate for and this is the key point, for wealthy people to buy protective security, which might include armed police officers, when it had decided that the public interest does not warrant someone receiving such protection on a publicly funded basis. So I know other countries around the world, you can, for example, hire police services. In the UK, most police and certainly private security officers are not allowed to carry guns. Only armed police officers, not all the police in the UK carry guns, so only a certain amount do. And you cannot hire them out. Just because you are wealthy, just because you are a privileged person, here in the UK, that doesn't count for anything. If the authorities decide that you need the protection, then obviously you would get it. But in terms of being able to pay for it as a private individual, no, you cannot. And Prince Harry was sorely mistaken in thinking that he could. Let me move down just a little bit. Lawyers for the Met Police An interested party in the case said Ravek had been reasonable in finding it is wrong for a policing body to place officers in harm's way upon payment of a fee by a private individual. In a ruling on Tuesday, Mr. Justice Chamberlain refused Harry's permission to bring the second challenge, rejecting on a number of grounds. The Duke's legal team argued Ravek's view that allowing payment for protective security would be contrary to the public interest and undermine public confidence in the Met Police, could not be reconciled with rules which expressly permit charging for certain police services. However, in his ruling, the judge said, "In my judgment, the short answer to this point is that Ravek did not say that it would be contrary to the public interest to allow wealthy individuals to pay for any police services. It can be taken to have understood that 25(1) of the Police Act 1996, to which it referred, expressly envisages payment for some such services." So you can pay, for example, if you are a company and it's like a massive public event like football games, for example. So its reasoning was narrowly confined to the protective security services that fall within its remit. Those services are different in kind from the police services provided at, for example, sporting or entertainment events, which of course the organisers can pay because the public are involved. Because they involve the deployment of highly trained specialist officers of whom there are a limited number and who are required to put themselves in harm's way to protect their principles. These are all quotes, by the way. Ravek's reasoning was that there are policy reasons why those services should not be made available for payment, even though others are. I can detect nothing that is arguably irrational in that reasoning. So the court was told at the earliest hearing that Harry's latest legal challenge was related to an earlier claim he brought against the Home Office after he was told he would no longer be given the same degree of personal protective security. A full hearing in that challenge, which also focuses on Ravek's decision making and for which Harry was given the go-ahead last summer, is yet to be held. So basically, Harry put in a two-pronged approach. Basically, he's challenged the initial decision anyway, in terms of should he or should he not receive the protection, because he thought that he should have been able to put his points across before that decision was made. So that is still ongoing, and I don't think we have a future date for that, but I imagine it wouldn't be too long after this one. He also obviously put this in to see if he could pay for it. So in other words, I think Harry is expecting the decision to be upheld, that he does not continue to receive police protection when in the UK or abroad, publicly funded at least. So I think he expected them to say no, which is why I think he wanted to say, well, I'll pay for it instead, which of course now this has been overturned. I'm unsure if he can appeal against this. I'm sure if he can appeal, he probably will appeal, but it's not a good sign that he has lost the initial, even if he does decide to appeal. And of course, Harry has ongoing legal issues with various newspapers and things regarding privacy and phone hacking and all of that. So again, like I've just said, he is challenging the February 2020 decision against Ravek, and has where he was told he would not be given the same degree of personal protective security. And I think we've seen elements of this sort of not the same degree of security, because he has received some level of publicly funded security when in the UK. But that has been when he has been attending royal events, such as the coronation, such as the late Queen's funeral. He hasn't received them, as far as I'm aware, for any engagements that he has privately organised. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't. Although I have seen him being obviously escorted from the airports to wherever he is residing at the time, either Frogmore or wherever he's going. So I think what we are seeing is a determination to protect him at some degree, but it is not for everything. And I think Harry wanted everything. I think the police are obviously protecting him when he comes to and from the airport. That seems like something that is probably set to continue. I think what we're seeing really is the emergence of this kind of hybrid model of security, which is very bespoke to Harry. It's very much a goodwill gesture on behalf of the police and, of course, the United Kingdom as a whole, but it is certainly not something that he is entitled to. If, for example, the police decided that, no, we're not going to give you any royal protection when you're in the UK, besides from the protection that you would expect, for example, at a royal event like a coronation or a funeral or something of that nature, they could just decide simply to not give anything. So anything that Harry gets when in the UK, if you see him with police outriders escorting him to and from the airport, whatever, that really is a goodwill gesture. They do not have to do that. So all of the shenanigans, I think, that we saw in New York, it's all falling into place, isn't it, my lovies? I think those shenanigans were trying to prove, from Harry's point of view, that he was a high level security risk. That he was involved in catastrophic chases, all that kind of thing. I think he definitely was trying to influence the decision that came out today. The only thing is, it's backfired, it's failed, it took all the attention away from Meghan's achievement at the Women of Visions Award and placed everything solely on Harry. I mean, even Whoopi Goldberg thought it was a laughing stock, about this sort of car chase through New York and all the rest of it. So Harry scored, I think, a little bit of an own goal when it came to this whole incident. I am going to go to a few questions, but I'll kind of start at the bottom. Expiliadosis, I think I got your name correct, said, Princess Diana was supposedly protected by the Al Fayed security. She was at the time of her passing, and they weren't very good, to be quite honest. Private security, even if you're paying top notch, is not always the best, especially when they take orders from the principals that are paying them. Don't forget, the private security, you are their boss. So if they tell you, if you as the principal tell your private security to do something or not do something, they have to do it, or else they'll get fired, basically, or they could run the risk of being fired. Police protection is very different. The police protection can literally say, no, you do this because you are our principal, you are not our employer. We are paid by the government, by the police, to keep you safe. And that's why police protection is the best form of protection above private security, because they don't have a paid allegiance to you. And that is why, that's part of what happened to Diana. Al Fayed security was not top notch, let's put it that way. And I do believe, that risks were taken at the bequest of Al Fayed, for example, on the night. Anyway, police protection is the best form of protection, and that is why Prince Harry, I think, has been going after it. Going back to Diana, I mean, I've read books written by police officers, protection officers, close protection officers who had Diana as their principal. And, for example, they would tell her, put your seatbelt on. They would tell her not to drive fast. They would stop her from going places if they thought it was unsafe to do so. So it is the best form of protection. Okay. Olympic grade lurker says, if Harry can present one credible threat against him that requires police protection, I'd be more sympathetic. Well, I'm sure he has made his case. If he does have anything credible, I'm sure he will have put that to Ravek. And I think that's why he's arguing that perhaps he didn't have the chance to do so. But Ravek, having worked with Harry all of his life, they know what any sources of security are, and they decided upon a whole history. We're not just talking since he left being a working royal. They have a whole history, a whole recorded history of protecting Harry. What threats have been made, what threats haven't been made, and they decided upon a whole lifetime's worth of threats that basically he didn't need it. Spirit of Anjou says, does this mean he will not receive internationally protected person status? Has the decision put that claim to bed now? I hope so. Canada does not want to cover his costs again. Well, I'm sure no country want to particularly cover his costs. As far as I'm aware, he's not currently receiving receiving anything for being an internationally protected person. And I think very much that also depends. It is a bit of a grey area. It depends upon whether or not, for example, you are a working member of the royal family. If you are formally representing your country, either as a politician, a head of state, a president, whatever it might be, or as a working member of the royal family, you are a target because of that work. Harry's in a grey area because he was doing that and then stepped away. I think what they've looked at and decided is that what you do currently is stronger than particularly where you've come from. So because he's not a working member of the royal family, I don't think he gets that. If he was to come back and become a working member of the royal family and representing the country, then I think he would probably qualify for that again. Francis says, yes, it's different as they are actually covering the cost of the extra police needed for public safety. Yes, with regards to sporting, I mean, like the Olympics, for example, the organisers probably would have had to have paid for some of the security. Eurovision, United Kingdom hosted Eurovision. They probably would have had to have paid for the security around that event. So big public events you can pay for, but as a private individual, it is not right for wealthy individuals to pay for their own security. And that is what the ruling today has categorically come to the conclusion of. Yes, Jan says his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, told him if he stepped down from the British royal family, he would lose his protection. Yes, and she gave him a year's grace to think about it. Don't forget, the late Queen was a very, very, very wise lady, and she decided, in her wisdom, which I think was very good, to give them a year's cooling off period where Harry and Meghan knew full well, whereas before they may have been ambiguous as to what stepping back actually looked like. In that year's grace period, they were made perfectly aware what they would be stepping away from. So when it came to that April, after that year, and they decided to continue with their decision to step back, they knew full well what they were getting into. They knew what had been taken away. They knew the position. They knew everything. Whereas before, they may have, written their own sort of wish list, if you like. They categorically knew what was what by the time they made that final decision to step away. So the Queen gave them that year's grace period to think about it, and they obviously decided, choices were made to carry on with the path in which they have done so. Who's going to pay the court cases fees? Well, at the moment, I'm unsure. Normally, isn't it, if you are the person that loses the case, costs are recovered. But I imagine the British taxpayer will probably have to pick up the tab for any legal fees that have been wasted, if you like, defending the country against Prince Harry's attacks. Prince Harry will have to pay for his own legal fees. But it would be interesting if the United Kingdom actually tried to recover those costs from Harry. That would be very interesting indeed. Do you think they should? Spirit of Andrew says, I am thrilled with the decision because IPP status also cushions you against legal charges in another country. Like I said, I think it very much hinges on your current position at the time. If you are an official, working member of the family, then you would get it. As he stepped away, that has kind of been withdrawn. Francis says, I think the Queen would have been generous and extended the probation period a bit if they had talked to her, shown good grace, that they were moving one way or the other in an honest way. Well, don't forget, by that time, they'd gone and done the Oprah interview and, they'd fully embarked on that path, and they were obviously planning their next moves with regards to Netflix, Spotify, and whatever else they were doing. So I think by that point, they were probably too far down the rabbit hole. They could have pulled back, and they probably could have asked for a bit of a longer think, but I think they were already pushing ahead. They were already full throttle forging ahead, and I don't think that sort of fitted into any of their plans whatsoever. But I'm sure the late Queen, would have been very gracious. Queen of Kingsbury says, my opinion, Prince Harry is so entitled. The court case was frivolous, my opinion. I mean, Prince Harry only takes action if he thinks he has a credible chance of winning. So I think what it goes to prove is the amount of delusion that is going on in Prince Harry's head. He really does think that he's entitled. Don't forget there was an extract from Spare that came out saying how hard done by he felt. This is what he was saying, really, that he'd never been able to buy his own car. Let's just wind back and look at why he didn't buy his own car. He didn't buy his own car because as part of a lease rental deal with Audi, he had a top of the range Audi that was worth probably £80,000 to £100,000 that got changed every 2 to 3 years. That's why he didn't buy his own car, because he was, who at his age, has an £80,000 to £100,000 Audi. Certainly if Harry hadn't have been royal, I don't think he would have been able to have afforded an £80,000 Audi. And then he goes and moans, saying, "Oh, woe is me, I wasn't able to buy my own car. I had to be stuck to Audi, and I had to sort of choose top of the range." No, it just goes to show the amount of delusion and privilege that he has, that actually he hasn't checked his own privilege, because if he had checked his own privilege, as I think the term goes these days, he would have not included that in the book, because it makes him an absolute laughingstock. I'd love to have a free £80,000 to £100,000 Audi just given to me, as part of my job, if you like. But no, delusion, absolute delusion and greed. Delusion and greed. Spirit of Andrew says, yes, I agree about the sense of delusion and entitlement. But no, I think he really did think that he was going to win this. I think he thought that he'd be able to pay for his own protection, but obviously that is not the case. Queen of Kingsbury says, perfect example, the leasing of the car, the buying the car. He seemed angry that he never was able to purchase his own car. I mean, how strange. His position in this world was so unique. Yeah, I mean, let's just, suppose that Prince Harry hadn't been born royal and he was just a normal, everyday citizen. He wasn't overly bright when it came to academia. I'm not saying that he's stupid. I think he has, a bit more street sense. For a posh, rich person, I think he has a little bit more street sense because he's been in the army, in the armed forces. But let's just say he wasn't royal. He wasn't very academically bright. Not saying he's not bright, but he wasn't academically bright. What would he have done? I imagine he probably would have gone on and perhaps had a career in the army, which would probably still be going. other than that, he could have just ended up working on a till in a supermarket or whatever it might be. But he certainly wouldn't have, been famous unless he had some kind of real talent, that would have pushed him up. So he's basically saying, I wasn't able to buy my own house, I wasn't able to buy my own car, woe is me, I had to live in central London in the grounds of a palace in a very small, in a flat, and a small cottage, which would have cost on the open rental market thousands and thousands and thousands a month. He is exceptionally privileged to live in a flat. A basement apartment at Kensington Palace would cost thousands. A cottage, a 2-bedroom cottage, bijou cottage in the grounds, with all its protection, would cost thousands and thousands a month. So I don't think he realises how privileged and how lucky he actually is. Take away being royal, what would he have? He certainly wouldn't have met Meghan. I mean, Meghan only had her sights when she came back to the UK on, furthering herself and taking herself further. I don't think she necessarily was looking to do that through meeting someone to marry. But, hey, all of her buses came at once when she met Prince Harry. Of course, she was even going out to dinner with Piers Morgan to try and make connections in the UK to see where her career could go. As soon as she met Prince Harry, she dropped him like a hot potato, and that's where all the beef started between Piers Morgan and Meghan Markle. So no, I think Prince Harry hasn't really checked his own privilege of how lucky he's actually been. Yeah, I mean, the smaller bedroom in a palace. I mean, I bet his smaller bedroom than William in the palaces and castles was probably 3 times the size of a normal person's room, probably 3 times as big as this kitchen behind me. So yes, when he starts complaining about these things, it doesn't quite strike the right note, and people can just see straight through it. He is a very privileged individual who hasn't checked it, to be quite honest, and I still don't think he gets it. Delusion. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. Anywho, that is the news for today. I'll just check to see if there's been any further updates on it. I don't think there have before I go. No. So we will leave that here today. I will, of course, be discussing Chelsea Flower Show and other various things in upcoming videos. But for now, I think I'm going to sign off. So thank you for watching this breaking news live stream. As always, if you have enjoyed it, please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media with your friends so that they know about this video and what's been going on with the royals. So from me, until next time, mwah to you all and goodbye.